Our first question this week comes from Neo Tokyo. I don't know if this is a person or a place, but it comes from them all the same. They say, "Hey DF team, was curious to hear your favorite GPU generation / card of all time. Personally love the Pascal generation and especially the price to performance value of the GTX 1060. Cheers." I gotta go to Alex first on this one.
Wow. For me, it's actually G80, even though I only ended up entering a G92 card back in the day. But G80 for me, it was seemed like the first step into the future of like new rendering, unified shader architecture there. Could do like general compute with CUDA 1.0. Brought GPU physics into the game. It was so beastly that it was by far a lot better than like 7800 GTX Ultra SLI, even Tri SLI probably, in terms of like just responsiveness and all these other things. Huge frame buffer that lasted the entire generation. It was an extremely godlike GPU for the time that would only be humbled by a handful of games. So I feel like it was such a big jump for features and graphics and just everything what it meant. It was like, and it was just like so far ahead of like what you had on like Xbox 360 and PS3 by that point. It was a lot more powerful. It's always a shame that PS3 didn't get G80 or G92 or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that would have been a very different generation if that happened. I really feel like that is like my favorite, at least NVIDIA GPU. Yeah.
Ooh, Oliver?
For whatever reason, this might be a bit of an odd choice, but I'm very fond of Pitcairn. So that's the 7870, 7850 cards. I think they were great cards at the time, especially the 7850, which you could, and I did, overclock by like 30%, 40%, because it was clocked pretty low to begin with. You could get it easily over a gigahertz. And I think it was an important GPU because it was very similar to the PS4's GPU there. Very similar in a lot of respects. Certainly the 7850 was pretty similar in terms of overall compute there. And it kind of set the tempo in terms of features and performance for that whole console generation. It was kind of like the Pitcairn was setting the baseline for that generation. The only thing that really stood in the way of those cards in terms of like aging pretty gracefully is the fact that they had pretty low frame buffers. Like I think you could get 1 or 2 gigabytes typically with the 7850 and 2 gigabytes typically with the 7870, but there were 4 gigabyte variants available. They were just very limited in number. And obviously at the time in 2012 or 2013, when you're buying one of those cards, are you really going to spend the money for a 4 gigabyte version? Even though in the fullness of time, obviously it's been revealed that would be a pretty wise choice to actually have that card last for a few more years there. But yeah, I just think those were really compelling cards. I think they offered a lot of price for the performance. That was back in the day when, you know, in American dollars, you could spend $150 and get a pretty comfortably mid-range GPU, which is a long distant past at this point, of course. But I think those were really compelling GPUs, and that would be my pick for one of my favorite GPUs, at least.
Wow, that's pretty good. I mean, obviously, I got to go with the AMD Radeon R9 Fury X, but
I knew you would say that.
No. Or the Radeon 7. I don't know. No, in actuality, I'm going with the original 3DFX Voodoo. And I have to go with that because it was so mind-blowing at the time, like to experience that. When I first got that Voodoo, it was just such a monumental leap in terms of what was possible on the PC platform in terms of rendering. Like just a whole new set of features that we'd never seen before. Like the kind of stuff that was bringing it up to, you know, what felt like workstation graphics to a degree. Felt that way anyway. It was unbelievable. I've done a lot of videos on this before in the past, so it's worth checking out. But just in terms of the personal impact it had on me, getting a 3DFX Voodoo and playing Unreal, when you step out on that cliffside in the second level and you see the waterfall, it's just
Tears.
There's nothing like it, man.
Tears.
And you got to understand, like, other graphics cards released in that era of the first generation Voodoo, they sucked. They almost universally sucked. Like, I'm just going to say it. They were not good. They were bad products. They had issues, compatibility issues.
You don't like the 3D Blaster from Creative Labs?
No. No, I hate it. Actually, there was a couple interesting ones, like the Rendition Verite is actually a pretty good card, but very limited in terms of performance, especially because it relies heavily on your CPU. I think for transformation and other things as well, that slows it way down. But the Voodoo was just, 3DFX was so far ahead of everyone at the time in a way that I don't think we'll really ever see anything like that again. Where it doesn't make sense at this point to have such a generational leap where it's like we're going from this 8-bit color 320 by 200 style games with like pixelated textures, limited lighting and all kinds of features to like this like full 16-bit color rendering, 640 by 480 resolutions, which was high at the time, much smoother frame rates, and just like incredible support because it had the Glide API, which was cool at the time because
it also worked for such a long period of time. I'd say it's a pretty well scaling. The first Voodoo 1, you could play games on that for quite some time.
You could, and you could even brute force. I don't know if the Voodoo 1 could do it, but the Voodoo 2 can brute force stuff like Doom 3. It ain't pretty, but it is possible.
Yeah.